like all people, we wanted to design a glass house. And the idea of this glass house, when we read in college, you have also done. So it elates us because glass is a very powerful material. And opportunities came in 2015 and 16, where we sometimes we push ourselves in trying to work with a particular material or a particular style. Sometimes we look ourselves and say that probably we are fudging with a lot of styles, but then, as I told you, like back in 2008, we thought that every project should be taken head on its face value. So what we felt in design of these experience centers, that glass can be a very dominant material here. And with our idea of holistic architecture, we wanted to blend the outside and the inside together. The places the sites we were given, there were a lot of greenery all around, as you can see. So we wanted to use glass, and clients were very happy. And generally, clients are happy when you use glass. It brings some glamour to the project. But the happiness was sort of short-lived when we said that when we are using glass, we'll use only glass, and we're not going to use any blinds, we're not going to use any frosted films, because it makes no sense. If you use a glass, it has to be transparent. We wanted the building to be transparent, and it had to be that way. And they said, oh, okay, fine, you can go about the glass. And then some of the project managers raised their hands and said, what about the AC? Because glass house will behave as a glass house, no matter whether it's made in 1950 or it's made in 2015. But at that same time, what those great architects didn't have, we had the advantage of using technology. So we said that we are using the glass, and it has to be a low-E glass. It will be a low-E glass. It will cut down the heat, and it's going to be damn expensive. But if we want to use glass, we want to use glass in its pure form. So this, as you see, this entire facade is glass. And wherever we have glass, we have never used any screening system behind it. So the idea was to open up the building. You see, the outside green and inside green, and daylight for us is a very dominant factor. We are obsessed with daylight, you might say that. So in every project we want to bring it. Sometimes through glass, sometimes through other materials. But what we strongly believe that the amount of daylight in your architecture can live in the space in some way, and a simple space with a lot of daylight can change a lot of things. And you can experience it in different ways, not only through our projects but in all other projects. So as you can see that there is the dialogue between the interior and exterior. And glass is this wonderful property of being reflective and refractive at different areas. So at certain times you can actually see the reflection, and certain times it's a see-through. So what it does, and what it did for all these projects, is it created a series of layers. We used glass, then again there was a glass. So I'll show you what I mean. You see, there is a glass, then again there is a glass, there is another in the glass. What you see is a multiple reflection of different areas. There is a courtyard, then you have some green areas then you have a meeting room, then you have another green area. And when you're seeing it, it's a juxtaposition of different images. And it changes according to the light and your viewing angle. So it brings a lot of dynamism in the project. So you see, nowhere blinds are being used, because blinds are not necessary. If we want to use blinds, why not make a solid wall and put some windows. So it was initially, they were not very convinced, but after, because the feeling and the experience of a space cannot be communicated verbally. I cannot communicate how well the space will look until and unless you experience. So we always have this challenge to the client. We say that if you don't like it, don't give us the next product. But if we have thought about something, let's go ahead with that. So you see this boundary here this is with so much of reflection. There is actually a tree here, but these trees are actually reflections of the tree outside. The story of metal is again in 2014, and he's not here, but the owners of this project was Anjan Maiti, and he is the secretary of Ballygunge Cultural Association. And over a casual discussion, he has asked us to design a Durga Puja pandal for them, the Ballygunge Cultural Association. And the idea elated us because we always think that pandal or pavilion, whatever you want to call it, is a public domain. It's a space, so architects can, contribute. And we studied all the pandals before doing the design, and with our experience, we thought that primarily during that time in 2014 there were two genres. One is actually based on, it was a very craft based thing, they played with materials as well. You have different bizarre materials combined together to form the pandals. And another was, I see a pyramid and I want to put it here. So you have, the temples, the pyramids, the Eiffel Tower, whatever you can think of, that can be replicated. As architects, we wanted to challenge this convention. Two things came to our mind. First is, in 2014, during this time, we are doing a design. We have to embrace the technology. We cannot alienate the technology, firstly. Secondly, there is no conflict between tradition and technology. They can be blended. And secondly, we played with the materials. We changed the materials. Our idea of this entire pavilion was more of it came from a volumetric sense rather than having a facade treatment. So because as architects, that's what we do. We don't know any other way of doing it. So we had this curved walls, and the entry and exit were actually through these curved walls. And then as you enter, you get to a double height space. This is almost triple height. It was 28 feet, I think. And there was a transition from red to blue. Red represented earth, blue represented heaven. And these structures, these steel structures, were representation of the tree of life, which connects the horizontal planes on the top and the bottom. And here again we used parametricism. We used all these pillars that you see, they were all straight lines, but only except for the rings. But when they put together, they gave a curved linear effect. And we were elated using this myth because firstly, Ballygunge Cultural Association traditionally had been a very traditional puja. They never toyed with the idea of theme-based puja. So it was a very strong statement that we were giving. Until then, this is one of the most difficult projects that we had. And why so, you see? Because how much we can make fun of our clients, but basically clients give you a marker that sets that the project, the outline of the project. So when you're designing for a particular client, you know who the users will be. In this case, we had no users defined. So we had to make happy everyone on the spectrum. The people coming from outside, the people coming from the villages, people coming from abroad. So it was a very interesting challenge that we wanted to take. And we started playing with the metal once we got the hang of it. So every traditional element, the inscriptions that you see with stones were replicated in metals. We used metal chandeliers. These were basically reflectors. There were lights in the below and they were reflecting this. And there were challenges because the idea of what we thought that this can be made somewhere else, because traditionally panels were made in situ. These were made in workshops. The only catch was they were 30 feet. So they had to be made, then cut, then brought, and then again assembled. So that was one aspect we didn't thought when we were designing. We thought that it can be assembled, but this is a huge structure. So that was again a learning experience, and with Anjanda's patronage, we were able to go through this. And although this is more about the material, I would like to say a few about acrylic. We use this acrylic. This became actually the selfie walls. People started taking pictures in the selfie walls, and some people started. We saw a group which started with red and ended in blue, and they were started to take over this entire pavilion from us during the pujas. And finally, this is a project that we are doing right now. We are doing with brick. This again is a sort of religious project in the sense that we're doing this for a Jain community in Rajgir, Bihar. And Jains, they have a very strict way of life, and there are some very strict do's and don'ts. And this place that where we are doing this is actually an ashram where you don't get food after sundown. You have to take food, whatever food you want to take has to be before sundown. You have to rise. It's basically that you have to rise. The breakfast is served at 5 o'clock when the sun rises, and the dinner is over. The lunch is over by 12, and the dinner is over at 5:30. So this is the sort of area. But this project is basically about developing some rooms which has to have a 3-star category, because there were a lot of people who comes from abroad and they didn't have a proper facility. So there was a conflict, you see. The conflict was, one was a simplicity of life, and at the same time you have to provide some basic level of infrastructure to them, which is urban. And we studied for inspiration, we studied the Jain literature, and two things came into our, struck us really well. One was, Jains believe in multiplicity of truth, you see. which means that they believe that there are different ways of reaching the same conclusion, the same path, and we thought that we can use this in architecture. So in this entire complex, though this is not exactly, I'm not explaining the design, I'm just trying to explain you the philosophy through which the design was made. We have multiple ways of reaching the same place. The second most important thing that Jains believe is the purity of soul. And they believe that soul is pure, but soul doesn't have an independent existence. Soul gets imbibed into the shells being the different organisms. And the soul is not separate from the same. So this idea of juxtaposition, the idea of this duality, we wanted to explain through our architecture. And we used two materials, the concrete and the brick. And there is no third material except for the flooring, which is going to be a quota or something like that. And this entire complex, as an entire way, has been designed through brick and concrete in such a way they are inseparable. The structure itself, there is no cladding. This building has got no cladding. This entire building, you see the walls are load bearing. Then we have the structures, the domes. We have used domes here, and we visited Nalanda as well. Though Nalanda is Buddhist, but if you visit Nalanda, you'll see to the extent to which they have used brick. It's an amazing place, and we were very influenced by that. So we wanted to use brick in our own ways, and the challenge, it is still in the process, is that when you're designing a restaurant in this place, you have to design a place. Jains take food without their shoes. So you have to have a place where you keep your shoes. You have to have a place where you wash your hands and then enter into the restaurant. Now, the challenge is this is going to be still a 3-star restaurant. So that is the challenge that now we are working on, like how to have the two lifestyles blended together. And I'm sure that by the end of this year, we'll bring you up, if we're given another opportunity to show this project once more in a different way. I'll share with you the way we have finally arrived with brick. This comes to the end of the presentation. Thanks for being so patient, and I think I've extended 30 minutes. So thank you. Any question, discussions? Very sorry. So this project has started. It has started. We are still working on as to the detailings of, because one of the chief constraint is the weather. The weather is a very extreme weather there. So you have a lot of heat, lot of rain, and so the challenge is how to use the material, because we are taking chances with it. Because brick, exposed brick is not something, as I was telling, that clients are not very happy about. They are not happy when you use exposed concrete and exposed brick. So we have to work on it. We are working on it actually, and probably by the end of this year we'll have this on board.
So you're making any customized bricks?
Yes.
Or normal brick?
We are thinking of making some customized bricks as well. We've got hold of a contractor. We are trying to make some mock-ups